Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, please feel free to put your comments or questions into the comment box, and you'll see me turn my head from time to time and bring you into the show with your questions or statements. So please feel free to do that. This week's guest is Patrick Evans-Hylton. He is the host, producer, founder of the Virginia Eats and Drinks Show, an award-winning chef, journalist, and culinary historian with a deep for exploring and celebrating the rich flavors and traditions of Southern cuisine and, of course, Virginia. He is an author of 14 books. Let's bring in my friend Patrick.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, I'm so thrilled that you could do the show and take time out of your busy schedule. I am just thrilled to death. And other than doing the show today, what else is on your plate?
Drinking lots of champagne and eating bonbons. That's a pretty typical Thursday for me.
Oh, so if that's what you do on Thursday, what do you indulge on Saturday?
Sure. Sure. Well, I'm actually today finished an article. I do write for a business magazine. My background before culinary was actually banking and finance. So I finished that up for a magazine in Florida, and I'm working on an article for our daily newspaper here in coastal Virginia, the Virginian Pilot, and also working on my next book. So writing, and so yeah, and having a little bit of coffee here and there.
Yeah, just a little bit. So tell us a little bit about that book that you're writing.
I'm so excited about it. My good friends at the History Press in Charleston, I've been writing for them for a while. In fact, the last, I guess, 3 or 4 books have come through them. So it's a history book, a food history book, and it chronicles the history of the cuisine in the Chesapeake Bay. So here in Virginia, in Maryland, from 1607 to present. So it is a history book, but it will have lots of recipes and everything in it as well. And I'm just super excited about that. It's been a lot of fun. Digging up some information I didn't know and revisiting, just so many wonderful things because, the Chesapeake Bay, it really is America's first food region.
Right, and, I mean, we have to think about Williamsburg and Jamestown, the Chesapeake
Oh,
Bay.
yes.
Was that why you were speaking to John Shields earlier today? You said you were talking to him before you.
Well, well, John and I, gosh, we have been very good friends. I guess 20 years at least. So we chat about a lot of different things and we work on a lot of different projects. But I'm very fortunate that he is writing the forward to my next book, and he's
Oh,
also helped
wonderful.
with some connections in up in Maryland too. And so we've got always got a little something going on.
Well, I know that he has a passion for the Chesapeake Bay, so do you, and you're just to let people know you're down in Virginia Beach,
Mhm.
Hampton Roads area, Norfolk, and that's your territory of great expertise and passion. Um, Tell me about your family table.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Atlanta. I was born in
I don't
North
know if
Georgia.
I oh, well, hopefully Patrick will. Did you hear my question? Tell me about your family
Yes,
table.
yes, I did, yes. So I grew up in Atlanta, and, I was raised by my paternal grandparents. I was actually born in North Georgia. We moved to Atlanta when I was 2 years old, and so my grandmother, even though my grandmother that raised me was very young, she was only 39 years old when I was born, um, and even though she was a modern woman, all for back in the late 60s, all for the ERA and women's rights and everything, she still was a very traditional Southern lady in many ways. Very much like Natalie Dupree, really. I mean, Natalie had it going on currently, but she also is your very much Southern lady. So my grandmother believed in cooking hot meals. She got up in the morning, she'd always make a pan of biscuits and a pan of cornbread that we'd enjoy at breakfast and that we'd enjoy throughout the rest of the day. She only really cooked the recipes that she grew up with and she was familiar with, what was in her wheelhouse. She wasn't a super adventuresome eater, and so it took a lot for me to eventually even try spaghetti or pizza or anything different like that. In fact, my first real foodie moment was when I was 7 and visiting my sister in Washington, and we went to Chinatown, and that was very eye-opening for me. But, our breakfast table would be, always eggs, biscuits, cornbread. She would do she would make her own sausage patties sometimes, she loved to use a lot of sage in it, which I do too, or bacon. So very typical. Later she would fry up some chicken or she would roast a chicken or it would be a pot roast or very typical southern cuisine. Always a lot of vegetables, collard greens. I love collards, cabbage, corn. Of course we all know that macaroni and cheese is a vegetable, and so ambrosia salad. Don't you just love how the Southerners call everything salad, that's mixed together in a bowl, even though it was really nothing but Cool Whip and canned fruit. So we ate very well, but we did. Uh, since I was the only one really in the household at the time, because my grandfather he worked the third shift at a printer. Um, my grandmother loved to shop, and so we would go to. This was when department stores still had tea rooms, and so a lot of times after school we would go shopping, and then we would have our supper at a really nice tea room from a department store.
That sounds so Southern.
Yes.
It really does. It really does. You brought up Natalie Dupree,
Oh, yes.
and I know that she was very involved with ICP. She had a lot of friends. I was I remember going down to Asheville and I was going to go to Charleston, and I said, let's get together for drinks. Just now I'm going to be in blah, 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 which was 20 minutes from Asheville. And, you know, I, we went to the cabin she was renting, and then I took her and we went to lunch and came back. And, she's just a wonderful, wonderful lady. And it was a big loss that
Yes.
she passed away. And I'm sure, do you have a good Natalie Dupree story you care to share?
Well, I first met Natalie when I was 10 years old in 1975, and she was doing a cooking demonstration at Rich's department store in Atlanta. And if you were from Atlanta, everybody knew Natalie. Everybody knew her. And my grandmother and I, we loved to watch Julia Child and The Galloping Gourmet on television. And so we loved to watch Natalie also. And so it was neat, though, to see this cooking demonstration because it's probably the first time I ever really saw a chef cook and certainly be able to interact with her. And so after I went to Johnson and Wells and I started becoming more involved in the culinary scene, I reconnected with Natalie. We became very dear friends. We would chat and talk at least once or twice a week. She was a regular guest on my radio show. And then this past November, my husband Doug and I were down. We rented a beach cottage near Charleston, and we were down. And on the way back, we stopped and visited with her, where she was living in Raleigh at the time. And it was just a very precious visit and something that I'll always treasure. And after all the years of knowing her, I never had her autograph a cookbook for me. So I had her autograph a cookbook for me this past November.
That's sweet. Yeah, she
Yeah.
donated. There was a cookbook that Jeff Spear and I put together, um, and she donated a recipe. Just always giving and sharing.
Yes.
You
Yes.
had an other culinary person who was an inspiration to you, Martha.
Um, Oh, Martha. Oh, how can I forget Martha? I mean, Martha is just beyond the culinary inspiration. Martha is just a life inspiration, right? But yes, so Martha, I actually got to meet her in, I guess it was about 1994. I was still at Johnson and Wales, and she was in Atlanta doing a fundraiser for lupus, and so I got to meet her then, and and we were able to chat just a few minutes. It was a lot of people, so not very long. And of course, she didn't know me from anything. But no, I wasn't in Johnson Wales yet because I was thinking about it because I talked to her and I said, my first career is in banking and finance. I'm thinking about changing careers. There's a Johnson Wales in Norfolk where I live, and since Johnson Wales has left town, but and she said, well, it's a wonderful culinary school. You should go. So I flew back the next day. That was a Saturday to Norfolk, and then Monday I went into Johnson Wales, and I said, Martha sent me, and I've been very fortunate. Yes. And it signed me up, sign me up. And so I've always loved her. I saw her actually in Charleston, the same trip that I saw Natalie. She was doing an event for the launch of her 100th book. And so it was very special to go to that. Um, but a lot of people may not remember that there was the Martha Stewart Radio network that was on Sirius radio, satellite radio for a while. And one of the books that I wrote called Popcorn. Um, I when the publisher, they apparently had somebody that was gonna do the book, and they couldn't at the last minute, and, my background is not only culinary, I've been actually in the print, media business for 30 years too, newspapers, magazines, books, and so I know about deadlines. They're like, "Look, you know, 3 weeks, this book has to be done." And that was creating the
Ooh,
re yes, that was creating the
ooh.
recipes, that was testing the recipes, that was writing the text, that was everything. And, so I told him, though, he said, "You can do it about anything, it just has to be about popcorn." It was a singles topic, and the name of the book was Popcorn. And so I said, "Well," I said, it'd be easy to do the quick and easy route, but I want to do a popcorn book like Martha Stewart would do." So I had chili lime tequila popcorn. I had Death by Chocolate popcorn balls because my biggest mentor has always probably been Marcel Duchesnier, and he actually wrote the forward to one of my books. He and I lunched all the time and was a dear, dear friend. So Death by I actually it was his recipes for ganache that was stuffed in the popcorn ball. And so that caught the attention of some producers at Martha Stewart Radio, and so I ended up being on the Living Today radio show about popcorn 9 different times, which was just absolutely amazing.
Well, it's really great when you fan person of someone that you finally meet them and then you're at a level where you're I can't think of the word, that you're more an equal than you are a fan, that you are respected enough by them for them to have you on their show or communicate with you.
And of
You know,
course, prior to the coming on air, we talked about Sarah Moulton too, and she really was a big influence because when I was at culinary school back in the early '90s, the Food Network just came on the air, and hers was one of the first shows that I remember watching, and I've always loved her technique and everything. And so, Sarah, if you're looking, I love you. As a friend, I'm not a stalker.
no, I was the stalker, but she didn't know it. Okay, but now she does. No, she's fabulous. Anybody, Sarah Moulton, if she looks sweet and genuine on TV, that is who she is. There's no
Yes.
pretense, which with some other people on TV there is. Um, and I won't go there. Let's
I started to say I think we could compare notes, but
we'll do that off air. We'll do
yes,
that off.
but what's so remarkable is that meeting so many of these people is you really find that to be so, or they shock you because the on-air personality of Guy Fieri, sometimes it gets a little grating for me. He's exciting, he's excited. He helps a lot of restaurants. I get that, but I've met him in person, and what a delightful person! And he really is a wonderful cook. He knows his stuff. He's a great humanitarian. So sometimes a lot of things you see on TV aren't exactly what you think, and sometimes though is really a pleasant surprise.
Well, it's sort of like radio. You do radio. I remember, summer of la 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 la, and I was dating the late night disc jockey, And he'd be, and welcome to WBAL TV. Join us, blah, 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 blah. When he got done, he says, hi, how are you?
Yeah. Well, I definitely have a radio voice if I need to.
Oh, okay. um, Tell us about Hampton Roads and Norfolk, Virginia Beach. And I think it's your favorite week down there. Is it not
Well,
restaurant week?
Restaurant Week in Virginia Beach is just wrapping up. They extended it because of the winter precipitation that we had last week. But we have in coastal Virginia, we have a lot of communities here. So there's the city of Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Suffolk. Over on the peninsula, it's Newport News, it's Hampton. You have the Eastern Shore. You have a lot of different areas, and so each one of those cities is wonderful for us because instead of just one restaurant week, we have multiple restaurant weeks, and they do coordinate so that they're not all at the same time, which is great. So you can enjoy like 8 or 9 different restaurant weeks down here, which is really, really wonderful. And yes, it is. I'm a big proponent of restaurant weeks. I was just recently, along with my friend Martha Davenport from the Virginia Beach Restaurant Association, we just founded the Virginia Beach Culinary Council, and we're really going to do things more regionally. And so one of those is to elevate the cuisine scene of the area. But certainly the restaurant weeks is a great time to come and to get a real taste of, some of the different restaurants that we have.
Right. And I was down there, Virginia's for Lovers, at a point when they considered me an influencer. So that tells you how long ago that was. That the governor was doing, they were promoting the Oyster Trail.
Okay, yes, yes. You and I might have been at the same event. Was it at the governor's mansion?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
no, no.
It was at an inn and it
Okay.
was raining, but you went from region to region. I was like in oyster heaven. My God. I didn't care. I was sinking into the mud.
Yes.
You could tell the difference when you had so many regional oysters.
Yes.
You could tell the difference, the salinity, the sweetness.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it
8
was
8 there are 8 distinct oyster growing regions in Virginia, and it's true, it's just like wine, each one takes on their sense of place, the salinity and minerality in the water, what they consume, how cold the water was, how warm the water was. It's amazing. There's no other place quite like Virginia for oysters.
I do have a question for you. Now, you've 14 books. You're an expert on wine. Virginia is a large wine country.
Yes.
Cider, mead. You're an expert on bourbon. You're a certified bourbon steward. You're a sommelier. What don't you do in food?
I learned from the best. I learned from Martha, and that's that you had to explore as many different options as you are. It's good to have a niche, and of course, my niche is Virginia and Chesapeake Bay. Um, but it's also good to be as much as you can because I've had a regular television segment on one of the three networks locally. Um, gosh, for 25 or 30 years. And so there's some people that really only know my name from that monthly or bi-monthly appearance that I do right now on Coast Live on Channel 3, WTKR, or people that only know my voice from my radio show on AM 790 WNS, the Virginia Eats and Drink Show, or people that only know my byline from the Virginia Pilot newspaper. So the more you can get your name out there, and I don't really do so many cooking classes anymore, but wine classes and all, the better known you'll be and the larger following you have. And not that I need the following for ego, but that's how you book deals is the bigger reach, the bigger platform that you have. And so I've always strived to do what I can. And also I think too that education, it gives you a much broader understanding. So when you are writing about something, as long as at least as you have some base knowledge when you're interviewing somebody, um, you can do a better job of that interview because you understand at least something of what they're talking about, and it helps you ask more informed questions.
Well, I appreciate that because I don't drink. I'll drink vodka, tequila, gin if it's white.
Yeah.
I can't deal with bourbon, scotch, those flavors. And yes, I need, I'll do shots of tequila, but basically put it in something fruity. And
Okay, yeah,
I
sure.
know you're a purist, but
No, 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 I grew up in that era where the song "I Like Pina Coladas" was popular, and I do indeed like pina coladas, so, no, I think there is a broad table out there, and I don't think that anybody should, say that one way of enjoying something is better than another person's way. If you enjoy it, it's a short life, enjoy it.
I agree with that. Now I have a question for you. I probably have a couple more since it's an
Okay.
interview show, but let's go with this one. You write about deviled crab, and in Baltimore, we don't see deviled crab. We always have crab cakes. Can you give us more of a story about deviled crab versus crab cake? Or I'm just throwing the platform out to you.
Sure. I think that devil crab, crab cakes, crab imperial, they're all pretty much cut from the same cloth. It's a mixture of ingredients with crab, and then its binder, its filler, its spices. It can be cooked by being broiled or fried or whatever. So it's very similar. I love devil crab. You don't see it as often as you used to. It is one of those dishes that, at least right now, doesn't have too big of a following, but it's really wonderful because traditionally you will take the crab shell and you dig the crab meat out, and you mix it with pretty much the same thing that you would do a crab cake with, except the devil part comes that it usually is much spicier. So cayenne pepper, black pepper, whatever. Not so much that it burns the roof of your mouth off, but it's much spicier. And then it's put back into the crab shell and then baked until everything is done, and then you get to dig around and dig out of that crab shell. And of course, the crab shell has been sanitized, so there's not any potential chance for any salmonella or anything like that. Or a lot of times down here too, you'll see where they'll use like an aluminum foil um, shape like a crab shell, and so it's actually shaped just like one. So it's really, really wonderful, and it really is in many ways. It's the same thing. Boy, John Shields Restaurant Gertrude's has some amazing crab imperial, and I had that. I was up visiting John in Baltimore in October, and it's just a more free form version of a crab cake in many, many ways. Crab any way you can get it is a darn good thing.
Yes, I agree with you. But when I've had deviled crab, whatever, it was like shredded crab meat. It wasn't any lumps in it. It was,
Well, it is because you're refilling the f the shell of the crab, you know, you don't it's not anything too big just for practicality, it's a smaller space. So, maybe not too fine, maybe it's,
it's
you know,
mixed more.
yeah, it's mixed more, and I like a variety of crab cakes. To me, it doesn't always have to have big pieces of crab. Sometimes, give me one of those old boardwalk style crabs where, it's the claw meat and it's the back fin and everything, and it's got a good amount of saltine crackers in it, and let me go to town with that too. It's all good.
I have to ask you again another question. I heard, let me see if I got this right, that you have eaten in 1,800 restaurants during 2024.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Wow. Wow.
We get around,
That
and that's and
sounds
that and that's everywhere. We travel quite a bit, so, that's everywhere, and sometimes that's just going in and having a small bite, just to check the place out and to get a sense of what it's about. But yeah, 1,800 restaurants last year. I'll
Well,
tell you,
that means it's 3 a day at least.
at
At
least,
least.
sometimes if I'm working on an article, like I did an article, we're known for the Norfolk dog, is a unique style of hot dog down here, and, so I was doing a feature about that, and gosh, at one point we ate at 9 no, 4 different hot dog places in one day, and we tried 2 or 3 different dogs, so I ate like 12 hot dogs in one day, just I suffer for my art there.
So, um, all right. So you go in, you review restaurants, whether it be for the pilot or for your radio show or for some other entity. What happens when you go in and the restaurant's terrible?
Well,
Do you
one
write about them or do you just not?
I typically will s and it depends on how bad it is. Number 1, if the service is off, if the food is off, um, I've been in 2 restaurants where one, I found ground glass in something that I was eating, and the restaurant was kind of non-responsive about it. "We'll get around to fixing it." And I'm like, "You don't know who else has it on their plate." And so I felt obligated to write about that because if they had that kind of attitude, you know, it could be harmful. The chef, I don't have a clue what was wrong with him, but you could hear him in the kitchen, well, you can actually see him because in an open kitchen, pointing at people and making fun of guests, calling them names. And now I didn't write about that. I called the owner. I always try to give a restaurant a chance to make something right while I'm there. And I just
Right.
think anybody needs to do that. You know, number one, what I try to do is I try to make sure that I'm really evaluating this correct, because I noticed that, especially when my grandmother, several years ago, when she was very sick and we knew her time was very close, I'd had a really bad day and I needed to go out and go to a restaurant. Nothing was right. Absolutely nothing was right, and I caught myself snipping at the server and pushing the food around on my plate. There was nothing wrong. I was the problem, and I'm not saying that that's the issue with people that dine out, but you need to, number 1, make sure, is there something going on that's making me approach this? Now, if you get something that's really, inedible or something where the service is really bad, I try to have it made right. Depending on the circumstance, I'll go back another time. But typically, I find that it's better for me to only write and to talk about places where they are doing something right. Even if it's not outstanding, as long as they're doing something right, than it is to be negative. Number 1, I think as a food writer, you have to be very cognizant that you're not that person that is always negative, because there are food writers like that. They go out with an axe to grind. Um, Number 2, you have to think, what's the situation? I was at one restaurant and it was like kept sitting there and sitting there. They took our order. We sit there. We sit there. Well, it turned out that like the chef, his wife had died, so he wasn't in the back, and the person that was cooking, the sous was off, so the person who was cooking really didn't know what was going on in the kitchen. Now, they did eventually come around and tell us that, but how can I fault something like that?
Right.
So no, I try to use my platform to really celebrate what needs to be celebrated and to let folks know about that instead of filling the world with more negativity.
Right. And I can, I'm going to touch a subject and we could probably talk an hour on that. But influencers,
Mm,
online reviews, the, I wrote a story once called the Matzo Ball Soup Theory, a restaurant review. And what I try to tell people when they said, well, it didn't get a good write up, I said, who wrote it up?
yeah, yeah,
Check them out and see if that's the way they are across the board with restaurants. I said, look, if you grow up eating light and fluffy matzo balls and you go to a delicatessen and the matzo ball is like a cannonball and it's heavy, it's not a good matzo ball. But if you grew up eating a heavy, dense matzo ball, it's a great matzo ball soup.
That's right. That's right.
So you have to see who's writing it and check out what else they've written. Are they always a negative person, always finding fault? Then you can't take them. What are they writing about?
Well,
So,
and I think also how they quantify what they're writing about. When I was food editor for a magazine, I had somebody. I usually wrote my own articles, but I sent somebody out. They wrote about a restaurant, and the only thing, and the shrimp was like one of the main features. And the only thing they wrote about the shrimp was nice. And I called and I said, "What do you mean the shrimp was nice? Did they pick up the tab? Did they have a seed to tell you about their wife and kids? How's the shrimp nice? Tell us what we need to know about the shrimp." The shrimp were large and juicy. They were plentiful. They were succulent. They were beautiful pink coral
right,
color. The sauce accented the sweetness of the shrimp perfectly. So you know it's one thing to say, "I didn't like this," or it's another thing to use some kind of rating system, whatever that means. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Well, but according to what criteria? Now, if you have a criteria and you say what
right,
that criteria is, that's great. But if you just say it's an 8 out of 10, that's nothing. That's nothing. So if you're going to make a statement, number one, you need to stand by and prove why you made that statement. And then number 2, you need to also, uh, understand what you're talking about. I have no problem with influencers or people doing it, because there are a lot of people that are wonderful. They've cooked, they've spent time in restaurants, they're self-taught. That's fabulous. But if you're just out there looking for some free food, and are looking for an axe to grind, um, no, and there's too many of that.
right. I agree. Um, you have a pulse on trends. I mean, you go to so many restaurants like 1800 this past year. Um, do you have any idea or a pulse or a feeling about what we're going to see in trends in restaurants for 2025?
I think a lot's gonna depend on the economy, also. I think a lot of trends are gonna be dictated by how many people are dining out and the type of food that they want. In so many respects, fine dining is on life support as it is. There's always going to be a time and a place for fine dining restaurants, but there's much fewer and further between. People are looking for value, I think, more. I see that when it's my dime, I look for value. And I hear people all the time, "Could you do a column about cheapies? Could you do a column about happy hours?" So as far as trends go, I think this is going to be the year of tightening belts. I think that there's, and not to get political about anything. I think that we were heading into some kind of economic issues, perhaps, that regardless of who was going to, be running the country. Um, I don't know how some policies may or may not affect that, such as tariffs or something. And again, I'm not being political. It's a statement that if you get avocados from Mexico and the price goes up 25 to 50%, you're probably not going to be ordering guacamole out. Or it's going to be a special treat. And again, I'm not being political at all. That's just the facts. So
Right.
I think a lot of the trends are going to be people looking for the most bang for their buck. People are still gonna want something nice, but people are gonna want, um, to look for alternatives and to look for specials. And so I think any restaurant would be smart to start thinking now, and not that you have to give them, a 99-cent hamburger, but, what else can you add this value onto your burger? We're reaching a tipping point with a lot of foods where entrees now, at least in our area, easily are $30, 25 to $30, and, that's really starting to affect people, and that's what I hear from a lot of people. So, yeah.
I'm lucky I cook. I'm lucky I
Yeah, yeah.
enjoy cooking. Um, and it's not to say, look, I enjoy food shopping. I'm one
Yeah.
of those crazy people.
Oh, I do too. I love grocery stores. One of my first jobs was in a grocery store. Everywhere I travel, everywhere, I always check out the local grocery stores. When we travel, I always like to go to farmers markets and I like to shop there and I like to cook. I love to cook too, but I think we'll see those trends at home as well. People are still going to want to cook. But I think that, those price points, they're not just going to affect restaurants, they're going to affect grocery stores too.
Well, you can't help it now with the chicken flu, eggs.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
even at Aldi, which is the most cost effective, was 3.89 a dozen.
yeah, yeah.
And
And coffee,
s-
I just keep getting coffee tick, tick, tick up, you know?
well, I don't do coffee, I do tea, but I can tell you from a year ago when I paid 3.29 for this brand, and it's now 4.69
Sure, yeah,
for the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah.
And just everything's going up. I don't go out. I mean, I used to previously when I was an influencer and writing about food for different articles and things of that nature, get invited. But no, I go to my friend Nancy Longo, Pierpoint. She came up with the smoked crab cake ages ago.
Ooh, nice.
And she does themed dinners. We're
Yeah,
doing Chinese New Year's, and then she has Mardi Gras, and she
mm.
just did this or that. So, and it's one big table in the restaurant. We all sit around it. She buys tchotchkes that fit the theme. She did a picnic. She put astroturf on the table
Oh my goodness.
at a good price point, and it's a social event along with a dining event. And that's where I go. I like the idea of the sociability of it rather than sitting at a
Oh,
table.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, well, and a lot of times when we go out, regardless of whether we order from a bar menu or happy hour menu, we like sitting at a bar for that social aspect of it too. A lot of times, sometimes you do kind of want that just quiet sit down at the table, but yeah.
Well, let me get to my final questions only because we could talk and
A
talk and
long a
talk
long time.
a long time. Maybe you'll come on another time when this book is ready and going out.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
help publicize that and talk some more. But I do have questions I ask at the end of the show. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Ta It sounds like a contradiction, but take your time because time moves too fast. Enjoy what enjoy the moment, enjoy being in the moment, um, focus on what's real, focus on what really matters. Because, like we were talking about off air, I turn 60 very soon. And I can tell you, deep down inside, I'm still that 20 something year old disco queen that was out, 24 hours a day dancing in Atlanta. Except that my arthritis now proves otherwise. Um, so I think that there were times in my life that I wish that I had really, instead of always planning for the next day, that I just enjoyed the day.
Yeah. Before I forget, we got carried away talking and let you know, everybody, that links to Patrick's Virginia Eats and Drinks site, virginiaeatsanddrinks.com, is up there. And going through there, you'll be able to link into the cookbooks that he's written, what's available. There are books, nuts, Smithfield ham, popcorn, Chesapeake Bay, restaurants in the Hampton Road area. 14 books. You have a huge selection, some of it the history of the area. So we're going to go back to the questions. VirginiaEatsAndDrinks.com. All right, back to second question. What's the best bite you've had all week?
Well, I'm very lucky that my radio show every Saturday, it's just like one big party. So I always have somebody that brings food and I always have somebody that brings drink. And so this past Saturday, we had the folks from the Bagel Baker Delicatessen. And so it's a very New York inspired deli. They do their own pastrami, corned beef. So they brought a variety of things. We had pastrami egg rolls. We had a classic pastrami on rye. We had a corned beef sandwich. We had matzo ball soup that was their mother's recipe. We had New York style cheesecake. Absolutely amazing. Pastrami on rye, you can't go wrong with that.
No, no corned beef coleslaw and Russian dressing.
Yes. Oh, we did have that too. Yes.
That's my fave. It's my
Yes.
fave. What are the two things that are a must in your refrigerator? They
Oh,
must be in the refrigerator.
champagne. Well, in fact, I actually have my own refrigerator just for champagne. I've loved champagne. When other kids were going to the midnight movies and back in high school to see Rocky Horror Picture Show, somebody would use their fake ID and they go and grab some beer or they go and grab some Blue Nun or something like that. I
So what
always asked for. I always asked for. Of course, I didn't know what champagne necessarily was, but I knew cold duck was very affordable and it had the bubbles that I crave. So I always have to have champagne, always. And
okay.
then, the condiment that I like to really use a lot of is sour cream. So I like to have sour cream.
Okay.
I love
Just
baked potatoes, so got to be a lot of sour cream
got
there.
a sour cream, right? And I the sour cream that sticks out of my mind at the family table used to be cucumbers and dill and radishes
Yes,
and sour cream with pumpernickel. It was just
yes.
something
It's
very simple.
that's simple, but so many times simple is best.
Right. What was your ultimate culinary fail?
I was on television once doing a cooking demonstration making crab cakes, and I could not get those things together to save my life. I've done them a million times, and the gods were not in my favor that day on live television. It was a mess. It was just a freaking mess. And they cut away and to a commercial, and I did my darndest. Thank God I had brought some some crab cakes that I'd made in advance. Even though these were supposed to bake. So I put those out. I'm like, "Oh, we just skipped a step. They're already done."
What do they say? Football and go, drop back and punt.
That's
Uh,
right.
right. Yeah, I've done that too. You sit there and come up with something else. I probably would have said, "Oh, we're gonna have some sautéed crab."
Yeah,
Changed my
I
mind.
yes, or
Yeah.
it was almost crab dip if it didn't already have, some saltine crackers in it or something, right, or Ritz crackers.
All right, Patrick. If you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would it be?
Oh my goodness, speaking Spanish, somebody that speaks Spanish, help me, please help me. I've been trying to learn that language now, and of course, I know if I probably just I visit Mexico, and when I come back, it's better. But I know I just need to sit down and to do it or take a class. I've tried a tutor before, couldn't make it work with my schedule. I've tried all those apps. I mean, I can ask you where the bathroom is. I could order some lunch, but oh my gosh, I want to learn Spanish. So somebody help me, please.
Well, the one thing when I went to Italy for the first time, and I practiced certain words and stuff like that, and I could ask a question in the language, but they come back, "La da 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 da
Oh,
da
oh
da
yeah,
da,"
yeah,
and
exactly. No,
I'm like,
exactly.
"Don't
That that
know."
that that happens 'cause I mean, when we're in Mexico, I can order food, but if they ask me how I want the steak done, it's all over.
Yeah, it's not I wanna learn how to speak it, I wanna learn how to understand it.
I wanna learn how to communicate. Yes.
Okay, all right. Um, let's see. Advice to yourself, best buy, 2 things in fridge, culinary fair, new talent. Okay, we're to the last one. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Ah, Maybe. Well, I mentioned my husband, Doug. He's my second husband. My first husband, we were together for 25 years, and he passed away 9 years ago.
Mhm.
But I would be remiss not to mention our little fur baby, Senior Queso. He's a Chihuahua, and he's my little furry sous chef. Of course, he's not allowed in the kitchen when I cook, but anyway, his heart is definitely into it, and he's just a 12-pound bundle of Chihuahua love.
Ooh. Well, it's nice to know that. A reminder, everybody, virginiaeatsanddrinks.com for connections to Patrick Evans-Hylton. Patrick, mwah.
Mwah! Fabulous.
And we will talk again sometime soon.
That'll be
Thank you so
wonderful.
much for being on the show.
You take care.
All righty. All right, everybody, feel free to reach out to me via my email, which is food@jmoreliving.com, or my Instagram @Dara Cooks, and also on Facebook, The Food Enthusiast. And if you're on Blue Sky, The Food Enthusiast, you'll find me there as well. Next week's guest is chocolatier Sarah Dwyer of Chouquette. Chocolate. What more do I need to say? And we're going to be coming up to Valentine's Day, so definitely tune in and we're going to talk chocolat. You can sign up for J More Living free newsletter called This Week in Baltimore Eating Newsletter. It comes out every other Tuesday, I believe. Links to the show, recipes, food stories, or what's going on in Baltimore. It is free, so go to jmoreliving.com. Up in the menu where it says contact, click on that, and you can sign up for This Week in Baltimore Eating Newsletter. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Jmore Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. May your plates always, always remain full, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday.